So moving on from that little tidbit with my team, we are looking at the Atlanta Falcons playing Carolina. Their second time of the season in less than a couple weeks. You guys can obviously see here that they played the day before Halloween, which was less than, it'll still have been less than, uh, like 2 weeks, like a little more than a week, that you're thinking with when this game is going to be live on the 10th. But division opponents obviously in the NFC South. I talked about this division, possibly being one where it's like it could even get closer after last weekend. For the most part, you kind of did see that a little bit, with the division, with, Tampa Bay's win. Atlanta's lost to the Chargers. Carolina obviously got stomped as well by the Bengals. I think that their season, honestly, it's like you can't say it's over because of how bad their division is. But 2-7, I mean, this is the game that you kind of have to win. You're up against, I guess, not even the division leader anymore. I guess Tampa Bay took that away from Atlanta with their win last weekend. Excuse me. And they now it's kind of a do or die for the Panthers. I think that this is, even though they're 2-7, and I mean it's crazy to say, I think that they could still make the playoffs with a win here. They've been up and down since firing their head coach. I know they lost last week, but the week before they had won and beaten the Buccaneers, and it's just kind of a, interesting thing, I guess. I guess they had beaten the Tampa Bay like weeks ago, the Panthers. And then it's like you've got the Falcons, who it's like their offense to me is what's keeping them, alive. Not a ton of passing on their team, but very good rushing offense. This is the first week I think that I've seen that Cordero Patterson doesn't have the leading rushing yards on Atlanta, which I didn't even realize that this player Algier was. I think I had heard about him doing really well, and he was obviously picked this year. But yeah, a big bruiser of a back, 5'11", 220, not like Cordero, who's, I mean, Cordero's bigger, but he's also taller at like 6'2". But obviously this year, this man has been, producing all year and that sort of thing. Him and Cordero having, I guess very similar years. I know Cordero missed some time, but yeah, he's obviously got 384 yards, and then you've got Algier, who's got 423. A very good tandem back, almost 1,000 yards between the two of them. They should have that relatively soon. This rookie, this fifth-round pick, is doing good things for the Falcons. But yeah, I think it's very important that when you have a quarterback that you can't say Mariota's playing poorly, but is playing very average football with 10 TDs and 6 picks. You got to be able to run it. And I mean, especially when your leading receiver is a rookie, it's always kind of a touchy thing. But I mean, you would think that Kyle Pitts, would probably be more of a leader, having been in the league for 1 year. But then I guess we look at Carolina. Carolina apparently doesn't have like a top rusher, and I know that PJ Walker is, starting for them. It's not Baker anymore. He's only been playing in a few games. And then you've got DJ Moore, who's still, playing unbelievably good football. And I mean, being really, I guess, the cornerstone piece that they want him to be. I know that teams offer to trade for him, at the deadline, and that the Panthers consider him a cornerstone piece. Otherwise, they would have gotten rid of him. As for injuries, I guess, Jeremy Chin, has been out for the Panthers, a huge blow there the whole season. And then, I mean, I know that on the Falcons have had, I guess, AJ Terrell, has been kind of hurt, kind of a bummer because he's proved to be a very good young rookie. And, I mean, a couple of injuries to their O-line, but they're still able to run it really well. And that's probably another reason why they're running it more, to protect Mariota, try to prevent him from getting injured with a banged-up O-line. But I think that given that this game is at Carolina, I don't think that's a big deal. I think that Atlanta is going to score a good amount of points. They just went up a far better defense in this on Sunday against the Chargers, and I mean they only put up 17 points, which is kind of uncharacteristic of them. I guess they did the same thing against Cincinnati. But this team is usually used to putting up a good amount of points. But I guess against good defenses, they struggle. Tampa Bay's defense, I still think, is pretty good. Cincinnati's is, pretty good. And then the Chargers, I think, have a very kind of splashy off or defense where it's like, depending on the day, Khalil Mack can be doing well, or depending on anything else as well. Or I guess Joey Bosa doing well. I mean, they can have a very dynamic defense on the Chargers that should be, honestly, in my opinion, leading the team because the offense is really banged up on the Chargers. But they did their job. They held, a high-scoring Atlanta Falcons offense to, below their average in points. Because you look here, and I mean, points per game is 24. And then, I mean, you've got the Panthers, and they just don't put up very many points. I know it was really tough with Baker at the beginning of the year, which hurt their average quite a bit. But you look at this team, and I mean, the only game that they've scored, a monster amount of points, I guess, it was against Atlanta, who doesn't really have that sound of a defense. And that was obviously, in overtime, less than 2 weeks ago. And I mean, you look at Tampa Bay, and it's like Tampa Bay, they beat, and they scored 21, which isn't too much, and then, I mean, obviously the Rams, it's like they only put up 10, and the Rams defense, I feel like, is a shadow of what it once was. San Fran, obviously, a very good defense, but held them to 15. I think that Atlanta as a whole is just better poised to win this game and has a lot more reason to win. And they did just lose to a Chargers team that is much better than the Panthers, has a lot better of a QB, and they still barely lost that game. PJ Tucker, I don't think, is bad, but he's not a guy who wins a game for you. He's a very systematic, very calculating quarterback. But I guess, looking at this team, I mean, they're very mobile, and I think that, looking at that, I think that it shows that they're going to be able to run the ball on a Panthers team that just defensively, they're not very, I wouldn't say not sound or anything like that, but they give up 25 points a game, and they are a fairly young defense still, and I mean, you look at, obviously, the team for receiving on the Falcons, and it's like they do spread the ball around a lot, I guess. They get primarily their top three guys, a lot of targets. I guess I don't know if it's being forced to Pitts, but if Mariota just isn't on the same page, but this is a lot of targets for not that many receptions. I mean, almost twice the targets of this man. He's got the same number of receptions. But a team that, relies on the run, but then has a good average throughout all their receiving. Even these guys that haven't, touched the ball as much, it's like a lot of these guys don't, a lot of these guys don't get a lot of playing time, obviously, because they like to run the football, which I think is, really important when you don't have that good of a defense in order to control the clock and that type of thing. Looking at the defense, I guess, for them, I guess a good number of, sacks. Grady Jarrett, I think, has always been, pretty good. Lorenzo Carter, 2.5 here, but not too many total sacks on the year. 12. It's not terrible. It's not great. But yeah, it just goes to show you that this game could end up being kind of a shootout, because I think that when you have a team like the Falcons, and it's like they're getting ahead and they're controlling the clock, that these 8 picks are probably due to the fact that the other team is trying to force it downfield, because it's like you look here, and it's not one guy on their team that's dominating. It's a bunch of guys contributing, to the team. And obviously, I mean, they have a guy like Casey Hayward, a good veteran, coaching up the rest of these guys. I know that Isaiah Oliver is, fairly young corner still, and I mean, just a lot of guys. And Richie Grant, obviously, a veteran on this team, very good, and that sort of thing. But you have, I mean, I guess the one shock here is that you don't have AJ Terrell with any picks, but he's been pretty hurt and banged up this year. And not a lot of forced fumbles, over 9 games for the Falcons. But yeah, I guess that's looking at there. I do want to look at Carolina and kind of the things that they've been doing. Like I said, PJ Walker's been starting, a little bit better than I guess Mayfield, but better average. Yards a game, I guess, isn't too much, but like I said, he's more of a systematic quarterback, and he's not a guy who's going to risk the ball that much. Obviously, 3 picks in like 3 games, it's not terrible. PJ Walker probably had to force it, for some of those, them being behind in, several of their games. But you look at their team, obviously led by DJ Moore. I think a very, very good wide receiver, does really good at contested catches, going up for it. Route running's very solid. Obviously a guy that they thought they needed to keep, to keep their wide receiver core from dropping just out from beneath them entirely, and then not getting rid of every single piece of talent that they had when the trade deadline was out, because they obviously traded Christian McCaffrey because they feel like, I mean, maybe they just didn't want to retain him anymore. Maybe they felt like, Chuba Hubbard and, has been banged up now, but maybe they have a lot of faith in him being a rookie. And Deonta Foreman, he's obviously been doing, fairly well this year, good average by him. And even Chuba, when he wasn't banged up, I know was chunking defenses. So I guess, the whole Christian McCaffrey trade was because I don't think they really needed him anymore. And with his injury risks, it was kind of one of those things that's like, if we can get, anything for him, it's a good thing. And then, I mean, obviously, it's like you look at this team, it's like Terrace Marshall's a young wide receiver, that they're getting more involved. Laviska Shenault they traded for, and, has had some, spurts of really good playing time, but he's also been kind of banged up. And just overall, I think a team that it's like they're going to need to get some consistency. And I think moving forward, if you're moving forward with DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, and Laviska Shenault Jr., you've got a promising young core, with DJ Moore being more of the veteran, the more of the leader that he needs to be, and that sort of thing. But obviously you look at this team and it's like DJ Moore is doing a lot in this team. I know that last week he even had, a game or a reception where it's like it was deep against, Cincinnati, and they just kind of turned him loose. Or maybe that was against, I think it might have been against Atlanta, but it's like Atlanta's defense to me is just very, very inconsistent. Yeah, it was against Atlanta now that I think about it, but Atlanta's defense, very inconsistent. Not any apparent veteran leaders on there, I think is one of the reasons why they just don't have really, and I mean, they don't have too much talent, I guess. Regardless of that, though, I think Carolina with an interim head coach, and with the fact that they're 2-7 and they've been on the short end of the stick with a defense that is honestly, I think, a little underperforming. I think with how much they've put into the defense to make it better, I think they should be doing a little bit better than this. But I don't think that the Panthers on paper are going to be able to keep up with Atlanta. I think Atlanta is going to have learned from maybe their mistakes, that weren't too long ago, or pretty fresh in their minds still. So they're not going to, allow the Panthers to come back and send it into a game like overtime, like it was, on the 30th of October. I'm going to go with Falcons by 7 points. Not to say that I don't think Carolina can't compete. Division games are always kind of sometimes a bloodbath with even how it was before. But yeah, the Falcons, I think, can still take control of this division. I think that, Tampa Bay winning their game, their last game, and then barely beating the Rams shows that they still have some issues on that team. Whereas Atlanta seems to have more of an identity, at least on offense, where it's like they're able to score, they're able to run the ball multiple ways, mobile quarterback to Cordell Patterson and Algier, emerging as obviously a good running back for them. And they seem to be staying pretty healthy in my eyes. Like AJ Terrell is the only big blow that I've seen that's been injured, frequently, besides I guess, the linemen. But they seem to be doing fine running with them with, their backups. But you got a Carolina Panthers defense that it's like really hurting without Chin. Chin, I think, was kind of a cornerstone piece that was doing really well for them. And they have some other pieces that need to step up, but I just haven't seen it from their defense. So yeah, I'm going with Atlanta by 10 points. Final prediction, with I think it being probably a lower scoring game than before. I think Atlanta, that you could say that they're probably going to score around 25. I'm not saying that just because of their average. I'm saying that because I think, 3 or 4 touchdowns with like a field goal in there, seems logical against a Panthers team. And then the Panthers team who are still figuring out, I mean, maybe, but they've been pretty banged up. So, I mean, that's another reason why I don't think that offensively, I think Carolina is going to struggle without consistency. So Atlanta Falcons by 10 points.